Assalamu alaikum, and welcome once again to a new episode of the New World Education Podcast. This is a universal education for a universal people. We thank you for joining us, and of course, today we're going to have another powerful packed podcast. We should have some very insightful commentary. I'm actually really excited to get into this topic today because in this week I found some awesome research, and so I'm ready to share it with you. Once again, my name is Sister Deborah Muhammad. I'm your host, along with my beautiful and very accomplished co-hosts, Sister Damozel Muhammad, who is the production manager and the sound engineer, as well as one of our co-hosts. Always brings insightful commentary to the conversation. And also we have Sister Gabrielle Muhammad, who of course always makes it plain. Like the video, they had a video for the Muslims called Make It Plain. Well, that's Sister Gabrielle, AKA Make It Plain. And this podcast is sponsored by the Supreme Wisdom Educational Center. And today we have our live chat. Do we have our chat on, Sister Damozel? So once we get our live chat on, we want you all to join us with the chat. And please, by all means, join in on the conversation. Last episode, we had the most responses that we've ever had. It was wonderful to be able to have, these responses from our viewers. And we had some very good feedback from last episode. Very good feedback from last episode. If you have any questions, please make sure you drop them in the chat box. We'll be monitoring them as well. And let's see what else we have here. Oh, don't forget to please, if you're watching us for the first time, subscribe. We really would love to have you as a member of our community. Also, we would like for you to share this podcast, especially with it live. So if you're watching it, please share it on your social media, your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, so that we can get other people to come in and join us. And please, by all means, make sure that you hit that notification bell, because we've been uploading like crazy this week. We are uploading the Time and What Must Be Done lecture series. Of course, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam is under attack, and they are trying to remove, but they have removed the Nation of Islam YouTube channel, Facebook, and Twitter page. And so, of course, we have to spread the news. So we have the Time and What Must Be Done lecture series. You can find them in our playlist. And so, inshallah, in the next week, we will have them all up. So how's everybody doing? How are you all doing today? How's your week been?
I've had a pretty easy week, I must say.
In the time of COVID, to have an easy week, and in the time of all of the foolishness that's going on in Washington, D.C., that's pretty good. Well, we are not going to talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C., but what we will do is that we will talk about current events as it relates to some of the side effects of what is going on in Washington, D.C. as it relates to schools. So I have some very wonderful articles. Well, they're not wonderful, but they're insightful articles. And I want to share them with us today. And these articles come from the New York Times newspaper. And the first article is entitled, "Will Any More Schools Reopen in 2020?"
Sorry to cut you off. Could you share the screen, please?
Okay. Well, let me
what
go
you're
ahead.
Talking about.
Let's see. What am I talking about? So let me get to it first, then I can share the screen with you. Okay, so now that's not the first article. So let me get the articles pulled up so that way I don't have to keep switching in between the article, so I'll just have them all loaded in the queue, as they say. And I have one more here. I didn't see us live on YouTube. Do you all see us live?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and share with you all my screen so that way we can all be on the same page. Did you all get a chance to take a look at it?
That's why I'm telling you to read it.
So that would be a no. Okay. So the first article is, will any more schools reopen in 2020? You know, on the East Coast, that the schools are actually still closed. They're still going remote. So you have students in like New Jersey, they're still remote. You have in Maryland, still remote. So the question is, will any more schools reopen in 2020? It says Philadelphia, Minneapolis, and other major cities have suspended opening plans as cases rise nationwide. I know, Sister Gabrielle, you were saying that your school had a spike in COVID cases, and so
Word on the street.
word on the street is okay. Word on the campus.
The 2Ls were trying to blame the 1Ls, and the 1Ls were trying to blame the 2Ls. And so, as the professor said, they say maybe the professor's going to blame the students, but that's what it seems like. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, you know, it's a virus, and you know, by nature of viruses, you know what they do, they spread. And then the other thing is that this virus is mutating, so we really can't say what's going to happen. If you had a strand of the coronavirus last year, it may actually be a new strand this year. So we just don't know. So let's look and see what this article says. It says on Tuesday, Philadelphia plans to, Philadelphia delayed plans to bring its youngest public school students back to the classroom for at least some in-person instruction on November 30th. As the number of cases in the city, as the cases rise in the city, remote learning continues for all students until further notice. Many of these cities are starting to shut down again. So when we talk about remote learning, online learning, and it's going to go to one of the other articles that we're going to review this week. And it says, we hope to see these children in school before the spring, but it's going to be based on advice from the health community, said William R. Height, Jr., superintendent. So I thought that was interesting, because what if, you know, the students stay online for the entire school year? What is that going to look like? How is education going to change as we continue to stretch out this online learning? So let's go to the next article, and then afterwards we'll have a little talk about it. The next article is something similar to what you said, Sister Gabrielle, and I think this is it. Yeah. After 700 students test positive, a college president resigns. The State University of New York, and I think it's Oneida, had the worst corona outbreak in any public university in the state. 700 students tested positive for the COVID-19. So the article goes on to read that the State University of New York at Oneida, or Oneida, depends on how you read it, the unit on Thursday announced an abrupt resignation of its president only 2 weeks after it experienced the most severe corona outbreak of any public university in the state. The departure of the president, Barbara Jean Morris, is one of the most high profile over the country coronavirus crisis, which has thrown many colleges and universities across the country into turmoil as they maintain some semblance of campus life during the outbreak. So it says last month, more than 700 students at Oneida tested positive for the virus, causing the shutdown of the in-person classes. And it says that the outbreak forced the state officials to send a virus control crew to the university to keep the spread from reaching to the rest of the city, which is in upstate New York. And then I'll just end out here. It says on social media posts about the students being taken out of the dorm rooms in the middle of the night by men in hazmat suits were widely circulated. Photos of the students partying in quarantined dorms went viral, drawing the ire of parents, staff, and town residents. So this is a picture here of one of the students being taken out of the campus. This is a person that had a hazmat suit. So very interesting, very interesting. So next article. So how will school look in the future? The next article is, and which I thought was interesting. Let's see, I don't know if I can get to this one, but I will read it. It says, are we losing a generation of children to remote learning? And then basically what it is dealing with, it says, leaving children to teach themselves from the sofa might be the greatest untold tragedy of the pandemic. So what this article is really talking about is that students now having to do remote learning, many of them are, because you still have to go to school all day, right? So many of these children as young as first and second grade are having to get online, sit in front of the computer, and you really don't have that feedback loop, and you may not have the supervision that's necessary for the students to make sure that the students are learning. So the question that they're posing is as a result of this, we're losing a generation of students, because if you have 3 years of poor education, literally, that child can, in some cases, not even recover academically from 3 years of bad education. So that's one. And then this last one, I thought that was interesting. This one is, my son thinks I'm his teacher. So when schools and home are in the same place, it's important to draw a line between the parent and the educator. It says, here's how. So I thought that this was an interesting article. You all are still on mute if you want to comment.
Hey, of course, that's interesting. The way you read it, I don't know if that's how it was intended to be read and how it was taken, but the way it sound like they were upset about that.
I think that is the way it was intended to be taken. So let's look.
But
yes, ma'am.
Isn't the mother the first teacher? So why are you upset?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I'm just asking now,
That's a good question. What if they have to be their only teacher, or a father? Could be a father.
Yeah. The parents are the first teachers.
Then what? Then what are we going to do if that's the case? Okay, so anyway.
Teach your children.
Very interesting, because that's what we're going to deal with today. Teach your children.
Bring them to the gas station, teach them how to pump gas, teach them how to count some money.
Well, the question is, who is going to pay for the parents to be at home?
Hey, look,
you had to figure that one out.
Look, yeah. I'm starting to see a lot of people working from home.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware that some jobs you can't, like, you're a truck driver,
Well, pretty soon, Sister Demoiselle, believe it or not, that they're going to have Elon Musk and the Tesla, they're going to have it where they'll have remote control trucks on the road.
That ain't gonna work.
It's not gonna work?
No, they're not gonna take me. Look, the machines can't have my job, okay?
Look, let me tell you something.
Be like the people, they can't have it. We're not iRobot in here, okay?
Get ready. It's going. Look, and this is a sidebar, but my husband forgot his credit card at home yesterday, and he needed to put some gas in the vehicle, and he was in another city. And I was like, they have something called Google Pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, okay, give me the information. Let me see if it works. And the thing said, just hold your phone, just turn your phone on, open the code, and just hold it up to the whatever, the device, the tank, the pumping station. I'm telling you, this thing, hey, it's deep.
Oh, yeah.
This is some real
but the thing is,
1984 stuff.
But the thing is, all this that's going on, and even too with the virus, something like this, they've already primed everybody for this in these movies. See, a lot of times we take the movies to be entertainment.
That's
but
right.
a lot of times they've already come up with that technology, in secret. It just hadn't reached the masses.
You remember that show on the History Channel, from tactical to practical?
Mm-hmm.
It was a thing that they would show you all this FBI and CIA technology that became something that the general population used. That's exactly what you're talking about.
What I was thinking about was it was a Bruce Willis movie where they would sit at home, and it's like you can.
I know what you're talking about.
What's the name of the movie?
I don't know, but I know what you're talking about.
I think it was called like Surrogate or something like that.
Something like that.
But the people had like avatars, and they would interact, throughout the world through like some type of android that they were controlling from some type of pod in their home, and they could get whoever they want.
But they are human beings, so they had to eat. So just like we have now, you have Uber Eats, you have all these DoorDash. So you literally don't have to leave your house. You can work from a computer and almost do everything. So that's not too far-fetched from the reality.
It's not.
So the question is, what are we going to do with the children?
I'm quite sure people who were cashiers didn't expect to have the what's the self-checkouts, So
yeah. And trust me, still, those cashiers work much better than the self-checkout, but the lines are so long. Because I'm telling you, self-checkout is rough. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and finish this article right quick. And this will be the last article, and then we could go ahead and jump right into it. But once again, my son thinks I'm his teacher. That's the name of the article. Okay. And look at the picture. So you have the mom working from home. She's sitting there with the ear thing in, and then the child needs help with their homework over here. And she's conflicted between the work and trying to teach her child at the same time. Interesting conundrum. Not interesting, but interesting at the same time. So it says, one recent morning as I was passing through my dining room, I overheard my son's fourth grade teacher ask him to explain via video chat, how he had arrived to a math problem. Because I've been in school for like 4 years, he replied because I've been in school for like 4 years, he replied as I cringed off camera. Okay, so anyway, it goes on to say, when the lesson was over, I sat my son down and explained why his response wasn't appropriate. And emailed his teacher to apologize on behalf of my budding comedian. You get the joke now? I see Gabrielle laughing. So you get the joke now. The joke is, the gag is, before the coronavirus came into our collective lives, I was largely unaware of what my kids and their teachers did in school all day, and vice versa. But now those barriers have become a thing of our pre-pandemic past. My son and 6-year-old daughter's teachers know what every room on the first floor in my house looks like. And that my parenting style sometimes involves yelling. And I know what phrases their teachers use to get their attention, such as 1, 2, three, eyes on me. And that sometimes my kids can find a pencil, even though the boxes can't find a pencil, even though the box is sitting right in front of them. Our home used to be our sanctuary, a place where we didn't have to be on, says Elsa McKenna, a stay-at-home mother of four in Memphis, who said that she feels like her kids view her as an intern of sorts, spending her days searching for tape dispensers and refilling staplers on command. And now we're literally on all the time. So we've gone from college campuses shutting down. We're looking at presidents of a campus resigning because of the coronavirus and how that it had gotten out of control. And we're also, let me stop sharing my screen. And we're also looking at the whole concept of possibly losing a generation of students because we did not prepare for an event such as this. However, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan asked us in 2003 to prepare an online school for our learning. Mm-hmm. So this man has been on time, before time, and he has been a consistent advisor and guide for us. And so with that being said, we of course want to see if you all have any comments on these articles before we move to the man, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who always sets the base for our conversation today.
Well, those first two articles about the people getting sick, I mean, that I think we understand how viruses work and how they spread. And so when you stuff a bunch of people in a small space with airborne bacteria and viruses, they're going to get it. And then based on how their immune systems are set up, some are going to be susceptible and some are going to be not. But that's just common sense. What's happening on these campuses. But that final article really took the cake for me, because it's like it's just so interesting to hear like parents who are the stewards of their children's lives like complaining that they have to be involved in it educationally. It's like, how dare I have to teach my child? Like,
that's somebody else's job. That ain't my job.
Right. And that's interesting how American society, let's just keep it plain. American society has conditioned us to believe that our education, is in the hands of others. And, our education really is to serve others. And there's no way possible that, you as a parent can teach your child or prepare them for life. And so that's just interesting how, just the offense of it all. Like, I didn't sign up for this. That's what kind of that sense that I got, and I just thought that was very peculiar. And that in and of itself is a problem. But even in this, post COVID world, it all of these on its face misfortunes still work out for the good, because now this can reunify the family by being forced to have to take on those more traditional roles, because now the argument for two-parent households is starting to be a stronger argument, because you just can't work and take care of the child or teach the child at the same time. And that's what I saw in the picture, is that the mother, I didn't see a second parent, but I just saw one parent who was working and having to look over her shoulder and deal with the child as well. So even now, the argument for the need for two-parent households are going up, and also the argument for really a primary breadwinner in the family, while one stays at home and handles the domestic things. Because it's interesting, because after the Industrial Revolution, when they wanted to, they came up with the whole idea of having this compulsory education that lasted during the same hours that the parents were at work, so that your child can be taken care of while both parents work in the house. Because again, it was no longer sufficient to only have one parent and the income of one parent to support the household. So they needed two parents to support the household, which led to a lot of broken homes, because again, the stress of one parent working is enough, but now you got two stressed out parents that are working, and then they have to come home and take care of the child. So it fractured, the family unit, which we're still dealing with to this day when you're talking about divorce rates or the rates of single parents. And so now it's like, what can solve this? And as I forgot who said it. I believe Minister Avery was quoting it was the minister. He was quoting one of the presidents, and one of the presidents said, you can find the answer to any of America's problems between the two sides of the Bible, or between the two covers of the Bible. And so even that solution from heaven to to this problem can come right in and solve this problem. I just thought that was interesting.
Very interesting. And then it takes me back to the Prussian model of education, what they call schooling. And that was designed to make the children become beholden to the state. So the idea of schooling was actually to be able to take charge. The state would take charge of the child. The child would become a ward of the state. And so with that being the case, now we have children literally, and like we are like, here, take them, as soon as they come out. It's just, that's a very interesting phenomenon of how many people think that someone else should raise their children. Yeah, I just think that that's an interesting
between the TV and the teachers, the TV and the teachers. And then we look up and trying to figure out when they become adults, why they don't know this. Why, it's your fault.
Exactly.
The reason why they don't know this, teacher.
Exactly.
It's your fault.
Right.
So,
right. When they're in the home with the parent. Yeah.
Right. But as we discussed on the previous podcast, pre-corona, you would go to school and you're at school most of the time. By the time you come home, you eat, go to your room, watch TV, whatever you're doing. So it's no real family interaction. So, whereas before where people would sit at the table and eat, we eat separately now. I'm gonna go sit in front of my video games or my TV, and you got a TV, you got a TV, you got a TV. We all go to our TVs or phones. And, we communicate through social media now. Be in the same house.
And some people don't even look at their social media, huh? So you can't even communicate them through that.
Right. Look. I remember when we were in the house together, you would send emails.
I know, you wouldn't even get that. Okay. So the communication gap. Yes. So that's absolutely true. And with people having such being scheduled for so many different things. One child has basketball, the other one has football, dance, and piano. And then by the time you get home, you're just so worn out. All you could do was go to sleep and start back over again the next day. So,
which is practice for when they get older and have to go to work. So they are used to waking up at can't see morning, coming home at can't see night, just to do it over again.
That sounds like a slave existence to me. I mean, I don't know what you all think, but that's what it sounds like to me. Well,
and then use your little free time you have to do whatever partying you're gonna do.
That's what they
and have to leave and be tired. No, I'm just saying, how sometimes I don't know what slaves actually did, but from what I've seen or read and heard, that they would work, like you said, from can't see morning to can't see night, and then at nighttime, they would do their little partying or whatever that they could do for however long they could do it, just to get back, so I'm quite sure they're very tired. So you talking about bringing children on top of that?
Yes.
And having to not just having to, but to raising children and children growing up in your house is two different things. Those two totally different things. So
rough.
And so with this teaching, with the children being in the home now, having to teach your children, you're having to actually raise your children.
Think about that.
Oh, and another thing that I was thinking about those. No,
I'm just saying.
But another thing about the whole how this pandemic is causing people, like you said, the outbreaks, and that's also dealing with this whole idea of having education on like this timetable. Like you have to, you have to get all this learning in and cover all these subjects in between this time, and if you don't getting in between that time, they're going somehow it's going to affect your learning, and that kind of brings the case about having education year round. Because again, if you had education year round, you don't have to be held to these timetables where you can really deal with the quality of information and making sure taking that time that you need to make sure the student understands the material instead of just trying to give it all to them on the timetable, and if they don't get it in that time frame, you punish them for it. And so and that's what you were talking about, the outbreak on my campus, and how what I'm seeing as a ramification of it's bringing out a lot of things, because we still have the same campus with the same parameters, the same amount of classroom with the same dimensions, but yet by law now you can't put the same amount of people in a small space because they can't be stuffed in there, because then that's going to be a breeding ground for disease. So now they need to put less students in one classroom. So that what does that mean? That being to hold the same amount of students, you're going to need more classrooms and more teachers. So now this is bringing up the necessity of teachers and how important teachers are, because now that the classrooms have to be smaller, but you still have the same population, that means you need to hire more teachers. And so this is putting the emphasis on the need for teachers, and again, it's just interesting how all of this is bringing out all of those things that we've been traditionally taught that, was not the case or shouldn't be the case. And we always had in our mind, this is the only way it can be, that you have to have 50 students to one teacher. The only way it could be is if you had 180 days to learn all the information. But now, because of having to take time, because again, if your teacher gets sick, it's one thing when a student gets sick, right? They'll just say, oh, you can make up work, you can, but when the teacher gets sick, that stops your entire lesson. That stops your entire forward motion. So if a teacher gets sick, you have to stop and take that time. And so this is for, and then back again, before Corona, if you got sick, you would basically have to go to work sick in being afraid that you would get fired if you took too much time off.
That's right.
So it's okay for them to work you, 365 days a year, and from 9 to 5. But don't dare you get sick for more than 3 days, then you're at risk of getting fired. But now that there's a pandemic, it's forcing companies to have to relax their the harshness of not allowing people to take that time. So it's just very.
The world has changed.
Oh yeah.
The minister said we'll never go back to what we used to have. Never.
I mean, but anytime there's change, do you go back?
No. That's the nature of change. You really don't. You really don't. I mean, it's like Pandora's box. Once it's open, it's you can't put it back. Once people know. I mean, how many people are you going to get to go sit down at in a cubicle for 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day now, when they could do that from their home, at a call center or something like that? People are just, it's just, we'll never go back. And they've known this the whole time. They just have stretched out their ability to, control us or keep us enslaved mentally as long as possible. But once they have to change, they will change. So with that being said, today we want to deal with the topic of the universality of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the universality of the supreme wisdom lessons as a curriculum paradigm. And so with that being said, thusly comes to the title of, or the tagline for our podcast, a universal education for a universal people. And so That's what we are submitting, that what this body of knowledge is universal, but it may not be, as we go through our discussion, quite what we may think when we think universal. So will we say a universal education for a universal people? The question is, are we talking about that it is our responsibility to educate everybody on the planet? Is that what a universal education infers? Is a universal education an education where everybody will be taught, the same way according to the same standard all over the planet? Is it possible? Yes.
I was gonna say no, because just like having children.
Mhm.
Now you can have children, all your children, same mother, same father, but they have different experiences, and based upon their experiences, you have to rear them different,
Mhm.
just based upon their experiences. Like for example, with my brothers, I can say the same thing to both of them, but I have to say it in different ways because
Mm.
of how they are.
Mhm.
Because I can say one thing just straight up, don't have to put any sugar on it, to one
Mhm.
of my brothers,
Mhm.
and they be like,
Mhm.
okay, but if I do that to the other one, he gets upset.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's the same way in terms of being able to teach something universal, in a
Mhm.
universal way. You have to teach to the condition of somebody,
Point spot on.
and so that's how you make it universal. So if you're dealing with, for example, genders, you wouldn't teach a female the same way you teach a male.
Spot on.
Just like children, you don't treat them the same way, especially once they start getting
Mhm.
into adolescence. You don't deal with young ladies the same way you would deal with a young man.
Right, 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 right. That's
And so
spot
that's
on.
how you make it universal.
Yes. And so, a lot of times we get standardized education confused with a universal education.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to kind of deal with today. What is a universal education? Is it a standardized education? Um, is are we saying, are we submitting in this podcast that everybody on the planet has to take the supreme wisdom lessons and be taught through them? Is that what we're saying? Well, let's take a look at the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and see what he has to say.
Yes.
Because he's
That's
the
where you
one.
start.
Yes, start at the beginning. So let's go ahead and let me get over to, um, where I need to get over to, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So this clip that we're going to watch is taken from a lecture that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did at the NCOBRA meeting in 2019. And here he is dealing with, they're dealing with the topic of reparations, right? And so let's see what he says in terms of dealing with that. Let me know, because we've been having issues with our audio, but let me know whether or not we can hear the sound once I start playing on that side, please. I need you all to let me know if you can hear the sound.
No sound.
No sound?
The video's playing, but no sound.
Can you hear it now? Wait,
Yeah.
wait. I'm going to start it over again. Okay, and here we go.
There's a verse in the Quran that says Allah is the only reality. Everything else is an illusion. We come and we go. like a ripple on a stream. Only a few are remembered beyond their times. It's because each of us does have a time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that's the time when life is a part of your being.
Yes, sir.
You're alive. This is your time. This is our time. The question is, what do we do with our time? Because there's another generation.
Right.
Depending on what we do with our time, that we can pass them the baton of time so that the struggle will continue until victory is ours. It is only vanity that makes us think that victory should come in the time of our lives. It is knowledge that allows us to see that when you have a problem as deep and complex as the problems that we have, it took years to put us in this condition. It's going to take years to get us up out of it. But each one of us has a work to perform during our lifetime. And if we are true to the gift that God has given us, if we are true to the principle of love, if we are true to the principle of love, then we will adore the ancestors who laid the foundation that we stand on today. And when we speak in our time, we speak for the dead that are gone and for the unborn generations yet to come. So there must be no weakness in our speech, no cowardice in our wisdom and the explanation of our wisdom. In Cobra, Dr. Imari Obadeli, Queen Mother Audley Moore, all of those who have struggled for the ideas of nationalism and Pan-Africanism. I hope that God will give me words that will live longer than I, that will guide our steps going forward, because the division among us is our worst enemy. Vanity among us, the ego killing ambitions and struggles of the ego to override what is in the best interest of us and we, because the ego always wants to express itself to the destruction of the group. Love is the only force that will put errant ego to rest. Love is the only force that will cause us to see how much of nothing I and we are as individuals.
That's right. Yes, sir.
But how great we are when we can put our ego into submission
Right.
to what is in the best interest of the whole. So I want to start from the back page of the final call. And I want to go over something in hopes
Yes, sir.
that we can agree on, not religion,
Yes, sir. That's right. That's right.
but universal principles that apply to every human being that walks on this planet. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in the early 60s, came up with a program that he said was in accord with universal law and principles, that is backed by the teachings of God and the prophets and the sages and wise people that have come up in every generation among every people.
Yes, sir.
He put something out called What the Muslims Want.
Yes, sir.
He used the definite article,
Yes, sir.
the. He was implying that old Islam
Yes, sir.
had served its purpose.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
It was dominated by non-original people. They did the best they could
Right.
because Islam is not a religion.
That's right. That's right.
Islam is the nature of God
Yes, sir.
and the nature in which He created the human being.
Yes, sir. That's
Every dog barks, no matter what the species is, because barking is a natural response from dogs. Every creature makes a sound that identifies it. And with that sound, that creature communicates with its own. And some make sounds that communicate to other species, not necessarily their own.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So when the lion roars, all species understand. It ain't my language, but that lion is talking to me. And I better understand what the lion is saying, because in it is a warning. No wonder the Bible said there's a lion asleep in Judah. Who's going to wake him? So those of us that are in the lodge or in the Masonic order,
Yes, sir.
the lion's paw
Yes, sir.
is the only thing that could raise the master architect
Right.
from death.
That's right. That's right.
We are the lions of civilization.
Yes, sir.
that is memorialized in the desert of Egypt with the head of a black man on the body of a lion called Abu el-Haul, the father of everything. But the face of the lion is the face of a black human being. Napoleon was so upset with that nose that only we Africans, you know, of a certain type have that kind of nose. That's telling you something about who we are. The rest of the black family is awaiting our rise. So when we went to Mecca, we didn't go there to bow to another man's way of civilization. Because before they were, we are. Islam is not a religion that came with Prophet Muhammad 1400 years ago. The latest expression of it came 1400 years ago. It didn't even have a name prior to 1400 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Because it was and it is the nature of God and the nature in which he created the human being. You didn't have what they call religion. You exercised the nature of your being. And the nature of your being is to be upright. Not to be a thief, a liar. You were under thieves and liars for over 400 years. And they made us into themselves. So when you look at black people, you're looking at a creature.
Yes, sir. Look. Come on.
Made in America.
Right.
Made devils. Because that's what the enemy is. And he could not make you righteous because righteousness is not a part of his nature. And we have been under them so long that they have made us into themselves. So we are thieves today. We are liars today. We are murderers today. We are fornicators and adulterers today. We are freaks today. We are lesbians. We are homosexuals. We are transgender. We are queer. Whatever the white man is, that's what we are. Because he could only make us what he is.
Okay, there we have it. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is speaking directly into the universality of this teaching. One thing.
You stopped it before it started getting good.
Well, we could only go so long. Well, most definitely.
He was about to say something right after that. You know, I memorized that lecture. So
Okay. Well, you could speak on that, but I wanted to speak on what Sister Mademoiselle said about, and I asked a question about universal education and what does it look like. She made the point, even though she didn't use the exact word, but the thing is that in order to teach people to have freedom, justice, and equality, because that's what love is, and obedience to the will of God. We went over that in study guide number 18 last night. So what is love? Freedom, justice, equality, and obedience to the will of God. But the only way that you can educate people universally is that you have to educate that person to accept their own and be themselves. And that's what a universal education is. And so basically in that particular part of the clip, that's what he was dealing with, the whole concept of that, every dog speaks, barks, and every animal speaks their language, so to speak. And he said that it's not about religion. It's about the universal principles that underlie, the religion. Accepting our own and being ourselves is really, if you could teach somebody to do that, to accept their own and be themselves, then you have taught a universal, that's a universal education. Because the problem with the world today, everybody's trying to be somebody else, not trying to be themselves. And don't you look crazy trying to be somebody else, not yourself? So, I was thinking about the other day that we have people in our community, Black community, that have bleached their skin, right? They were like dark-skinned people that literally, they get in these baths of stuff and bleach the melanin out of their skin. They have people that have gone to Africa and had surgeries where they take the color out their eyes and make them blue. We add in blonde hair. We do all of these different things. And I was looking at a picture of little Kim. And little Kim, no, this is not funny. A beautiful Black.
What she said, little Kim?
No,
Lil'
that
Kim.
she brought up
Thank
Lil'
you.
Kim.
Lil' Kim.
Lil' Kim, excuse me, Lil'
Yes.
Kim.
And that
But
little
beautiful,
Kim. Lil'
yes,
Kim.
ma'am. Beautiful Black woman. I mean, very well shaped and defined and looking healthy to whatever she has done to herself today. And so when you see her, you're like, you turning, all sideways because you're trying to figure out what in the world happened. That's because she did not have an education where that could promote her to accept her own and be herself. As one of the first clips that we watched, the minister said, when we send our children to white schools, he said, people talk about that, that you're going to get that education, going to make you white. And he was like, you doggone right. That's exactly what it does. It turns you into something else.
I mean, but to quote this white woman named Jane Elliott,
yeah,
somebody asked her about being racist, and she was like, they asked her, are white people racist? And she said, did they go to the American public school system? Then yes. So even as a Black person, if you went through this educational system, you are racist.
That's right.
And one, you'll be a Black person, be like, I'm not racist. How do we know this? Well, in the context of what we call or what we say that racist is, because like the minister said, when you put ist on, something, so we're not going to even go that far. But I was having a conversation with a Black man, and he was saying that, I like light-skinned women. You down here in the South, we say red bone. He's like, you're a red bone. I like light women, red women, yellow women, and white women. Because
and white women
because that color is a feminine color. He said dark women, that's not a feminine color.
That's the first.
I know I had never heard that before, and I'm like, you know, but this is the thinking of a lot of our people, because even being outside, what you need to go and, you know, take the baby in the house before they get dark.
Mm-hmm.
But then you would ask them, are you racist? And they would say no. And you don't, but you don't love yourself. You hate black. You have the thinking of those who have been put in charge over your really educational system. Like I said, I was having a conversation with one of my friends, telling them that I was having a conversation because one of my best friends is a dark-skinned female. And growing up, I told her that people would always tell me I don't need to be her friend. I'm talking about adults, not just children. And I didn't understand what she had to go through, her being dark-skinned and me being light-skinned, and people, we were inseparable. But people would always be like, you don't need to be friends with her. She don't need to be your friend. Not understanding they were just looking at her being dark-skinned and me being light. And I said, but the thing is, that even going through school, like I said, my teachers would say that. And I said, white supremacy is everywhere. You're being educated all the time on white supremacy. I said, when you go into the store, what the white food is angel food, and the dark food is devil cakes. I'm like, so everywhere you go, their mind is being put in you to hate your own and not be yourself. And so that's the thing, is so even though you might not be in the confines of a building with somebody standing in front of you giving instruction, you're still being educated everywhere you go. Everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And another thing that I want to bring up, and I don't think maybe I've mentioned this conversation again. I have a lot of these deep conversations with my niece, but she was asking me a question: why are white people racist? Did I have this conversation on this podcast already?
I don't think about racism.
I'm not sure, but go ahead.
Okay, but we watched the movie, and it had like a race component to it, and so I believe it was the movie The Skeleton Key, and this was her first time watching a quote unquote horror movie. But the reason I allowed her to watch it, her mom, because we understood there was a point to the movie, and it wasn't like crazy rated R, nothing or too terrifying, but it was more suspenseful. And the whole point of the movie is that what you find out is that these black slaves ended up using magic to be able to transfer their bodies, their consciousness into different people's bodies, and they were actually able to escape death by switching their bodies into white people's bodies. Switching their minds or their consciousness into the bodies of white people. And the irony about it is that their master was abusing them, and so as a retribution for their master abusing them, they switched their bodies into the white master's children, a boy and a girl. And so when the masters found out that the slaves had been teaching the children magic, the slave master actually hung the slaves. But what you find out is that because of the body substitution or the mind substitution,
they hung their children.
They ended up hanging their children. But again, because the only thing that they recognized as what made the slaves worthy of death is because of their skin color and not the content of their character. So inadvertently, just because they looked a certain way, they treated them a certain way. And so I was explaining to my niece, because she was like, I didn't get the story. So when I explained to her the background that the black people actually won, so to say in the movie, she was like, okay, I like it now. So, but again, she asked these deep questions. She said, so why are white people racist? And I'm going to the point of education and why we need a universal education. And so I was explaining to her is that, it's because of white supremacy. And so I was saying to her that white supremacy is based off of a lie. And I said that, and so because it's a lie, it is not universal. It is not true. And then as soon as you bring in the truth about it, the lie dissipates. A lie can't stand up to truth, and therefore the lie is not universal. You might be able to say that here, but as soon as additional information comes in, the lie starts to get weaker and weaker and
Good
weaker.
point.
And so I was saying that, she's going back to why are white people racist. And so again, going back to Yakub, that's what they were taught. And because they were taught to be that way, it actually became a part of their nature. And so when they actually went away from civilization, when they were kicked out of the Holy Land, they went savage. And so they went through a period of darkness. And in that period of darkness, they lost civilization, which includes knowing the sciences of life. They didn't know about the histories of the civilized people. They didn't know about the sciences of life, so they became superstitious. And so making these very basic assumptions, right? Making these very basic assumptions, they start to say, okay, well, if we're white, and we consider ourselves good, that means that whatever's the opposite of us is bad. So if I'm white and I'm good, what's the opposite of white? Is black. And what's the opposite of good? Is bad. No scientific basis, but just some simple, okay, if this, then that. And so what ended up happening is that, and that's what goes into really the psychology behind why the effect of teaching that Jesus, who's supposed to be God in person, is a man and is a white man. Then you're saying that God is a white man, and if God is a white man, what's the opposite of God? It's Satan. And so what's the opposite of white is black. Again, no scientific basis, just simple incorrect inferences. And so, but what ended up happening?
No, lies.
Yeah, but still, I'm just giving them benefits. And so, but what happened is that when they started to become civilized and started to learn about the sciences and different technologies, they actually found out when they got to the point where they were able to study genetics that the whole basis of white supremacy is that white people are better. They found out the opposite. When they studied the life germ of the black man, they found that the life germ of the black man was dominant and superior to the white, germ of the white man. And not to be racist, as the minister said, when we're teaching Yakub is not racism. Like he said, if Usain Bolt gets on the racetrack and he says, I believe I can beat you all, he said that's not arrogance. He's just superior and he can prove it. And so, but the thing is that they had built a world off of telling people that they were better. And when they found out through science or truth, when truth came, they didn't want to accept that truth. And so that's why they kept knowledge away from us, is because if we found out the truth, we found out that science, we would actually be able to tear down and dismantle the whole institution of white supremacy. So white supremacy in and of itself is based off of faulty science. It literally does not hold the test. So when you have an education system where you can go through 12 years of learning, because I had a classmate of mine say the same thing. He was a baseball player, and we just so happened to be outside taking a break at one of these conferences. He was like, oh, I can't stand this sun because I'm gonna get too dark. And I'm looking at him like, I'm not gonna say his name, but I'm like, but you're dark skinned. And I'm like, do you understand that you being dark skinned has nothing to do with the sunlight, but it has to do with your genetics. So the characteristics that you inherited from your parents is what makes you dark, and not how much exposure you get to sunlight. And so I'm like, and the reason that this is so important, because I'm a STEM major. I was a STEM major. So I was in physics, and I believe he was in physics as well. But so we're studying, atomic theory, chemistry. We're studying all these hard sciences. And the science tells us that this is how you inherit genetics. But yet here he is, and I think he's on a route to getting a PhD if he doesn't already have a PhD himself. But he's saying that because I'm staying in the sun, that's what makes me dark. And that's the same person. What I have to say about Jane Elliott is she advances that faulty science, that the reason that black people are black is because they live close to the equator. And white people are white is because they live in the snow. Even though you have Eskimos or Inuits or Eskimos that live in the snow, and they're actually very dark skinned. So again, that's why we need an education that's based on the universal principle of truth.
Yes. Well, what does freedom, justice, and equality have to do with the flag of Islam And it has
Right,
to do with truth.
And the truth has to be
Right.
made known. The
Mhm.
truth
Right.
has to be able to be taught unhindered. As
Mhm.
the minister said, allow me to teach my people unhindered. And so
Mhm.
that's the problem, is that, you know, truth is there, but it is being blocked.
Right.
Yeah,
And
but
so
who,
we have to come under a universal education that will be truth no matter where we go.
Right.
and this is what I want to bring us to today, because time is flying. We're already at an hour and 15 minutes in. I want to bring up in the lessons that ask the question, why does the devil keep our people illiterate? Now, I know the first time I heard this question and answer, it wasn't intuitive, the answer, because I know what I thought that illiterate meant. And so if we would just say, well, what do we think illiterate means? Somebody who can't read, right?
Mhm.
That's what we take the definition of what illiterate means. And it says that he did this because so he can use them as a tool and also a slave. He keeps them blind to what? Themselves.
No. Yeah.
Themselves. So that he can do what? Master them. Illiterate means ignorant. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you can't quote unquote read as in terms of being able to pronounce words or symbols, put symbols together and pronounce words on a page. I have two things that I want to bring to bear. And I don't know which one. I think I'm going to go into this one first because of where Sister Gabrielle left off on her comment. In me asking about, because, you go and you just do a quick Google search and see what you come up with. You ask Mr. Google. And so I asked, what does a universal education look like? Or what is a universal education? And, I already had my idea of what a universal education was, but interestingly enough, that research is most attractive, is best qualified and most attractive to reward our research.
History.
History, yes, I'm sorry, I do apologize, because I'm really excited about what I'm about to share. So in doing my research, I came up with a book, or it looks like it may have been maybe a thesis or something. And it says here, it says Introduction from Universal Schooling to Universal Learning. Very interesting article that I want to get into, but I'm not at this time. I want to get into something else that I found that has to do with that question. Why does the devil keep our people illiterate? Well, lo and behold, I found something called the old Deluder, get ready for this, Satan Act of 1647.
Come on.
Come on.
That's what I love. I love an honest devil.
Come on now. Let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to bring this up. The old Deluder Act, the old Deluder Satan Act.
And they put it right there in front of you.
Yes.
Right there.
I'm telling you, that's the name of the act. I'm not making it up. It is actually the name.
We need to get this. We need a news ticker that just keeps that playing.
Well, you know what? We have
Mm-hmm.
that. We just have to get our technology together. We already have that, technology.
I think we need another intern. I think we need a media intern to come help us.
We do. We'll see if we can find one. Yeah, that would be great. So let me share this with us. Get ready. I hope your head doesn't blow off when you see it.
It already is off, so I just have to find another head to put on so I can get it blown off.
The old Deluder Satan Act.
Come on.
Of 1647.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm.
Get ready for this, y'all. It says Massachusetts passed the old Deluder Satan Act in 1647.
The same Massachusetts where the American educational system.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay,
with
okay.
Horace Mann and the whole nine, but this is before him. But anyway, let's look what they were talking about. It says here, laying the basis for public school in America. The Puritans valued literacy highly, and they believed that individuals should be able to read and interpret the Bible for themselves. So in 1642, Massachusetts, this is before that it had the Massachusetts laws, which all dealt with education.
Can you optimize the screen because it's very blurry, and this is
It's
good information
blurry.
that I think
Okay.
that people should be able to see.
Well, let's see. I'm gonna stop sharing, then I'm gonna share again. Okay.
Because I think this is wow. See, this is exactly why they didn't want to teach us how to read.
That's it. What is this? Is it, how does it look?
It's the same thing, but it's blurry.
I've been having these issues. It's on my screen. So let me take share community. Let me see if this works. Yes.
No.
Well, where can you find it?
It is, you just type in Old Deluder Act.
Okay.
Old Deluder Act, but let me see if I can do something to make it better. Okay, Zoom, y'all gonna have to get it together here. Okay. Okay, let me see. Maybe I can do a little something. Let me take some stuff off of here. That might help some. Give me just a second. Maybe I have too many screens open. Let me try one more time. Hopefully this works.
Just go with it.
Does it?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't look any better? Okay, I'm sorry. So this Old Deluder Act of 1647. So let's go down to see what it says. It says that in 1642, Massachusetts required parents to ensure their children's ability to read, and 5 years later, in this act, the state mandated community schooling. Okay, so the act required towns to support teachers for their children. The religious basis of the act was explicit. The act stated its intention was to thwart ye old deluder Satan in his goal to keep men from the knowledge of ye scriptures. To this end, the law required that every town with 50 or more families to hire and maintain a teacher to instruct all children in reading and writing. Towns of 100 or more families were required to support a grammar school to prepare students to attend Harvard College. Similar acts were soon adopted in other New England colonies. Now it goes on to talk about how this was used. Let me just go to the other one. The Old Deluder Act. This is the actual act itself. And unfortunately, you all may not be able to see it. But this is the Old Deluder Act. And I think that in these colonies, maybe they spoke some derivation of German. So reading it on its face and looking at the script is a little more difficult to be able to interpret. But here, I just want to go into the first paragraph as the act reads. It being one chief project that old deluder Satan, to keep men from the knowledge of the scriptures, as in former times, keeping them in an unknown tongue. So in these later times, by persuading from the use of tongues, that so at least the true sense and meaning of the original might be clouded by false glosses of saint-seeming deceivers, and that learning may not be buried in the graves of our forefathers in churches and commonwealth, the Lord assisting our endeavors. It is therefore ordered by this court and authorities thereof that every township and jurisdiction, after the Lord hath increased them to a number of 50 households, shall then forthwith appoint one of their town to one within their town to teach all such children as shall resort to him to write and read, whose wages shall be paid either by the parents or the masters of the children or by the inhabitants in general by way of supply, as a part of those that order the credentials of the town shall appoint, provided that those which send their children be not oppressed by paying much more than they have them taught for in other towns. Now, basically, this act was enacted because they understood the power of reading as it related to being controlled by Satan. So let me stop sharing my screen. So the question is, he asked this, why does the devil keep the devil? Which, in other words, you use Satan, right? Why does the devil keep our people illiterate? So that he can use them as a fool, a tool, and also a slave. He keeps them blind to themselves so he can master them. And so they understood this in the early colonies of this country, that the whole concept of education was to keep one away from the knowledge of who they are through the scriptures. And I thought that it was very interesting because this is 1642 through 49, that these Massachusetts laws were enacted. But of course, where were we as Black people?
Right.
We were still enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about a little over 200 years before the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. And so during that time, it was illegal to teach a slave to read. Because the slave, as with Nat Turner, when he read the Bible, he saw himself in the scriptures. And so when he saw himself in the scriptures, you know, if this is what God ordained, then this is what we must do. And so anyway, I just thought that this was very interesting that they literally have an act that is called the old Deluder Satan Law, not act, I keep saying act, of 1647, that what this act, it required, I was trying to find where I had another writing, but basically it said that, oh, here it is. As a matter of fact, I should be able to share it. So let me share it right quick with you all. And then what we'll do from there is that we will go back into our conversation. The Massachusetts laws, that's not the one I want. This is not the one. That's not the one. I must have closed the one that I wanted, but I have it here on my desktop. I mean, I have it typed out. But anyway, it says that it says that the Massachusetts laws, it says education provision prior to 1647 Act. The law was one of a series of legislative acts directed at public education in the colonies. The first Massachusetts school law of 1642 broke with the English tradition by transferring educational supervision from the clergy to select men of the colony, empowering them to assess the education of children, to read and to understand the principles of religion and the capital laws of this country. It says it held parents and the masters responsible for their children's and apprentices' ability to read and write, stressing education rather than schooling. Then it says framing and provisions of the act. In 1647, legislation specifically framed ignorance as a satanic illness to be circumvented through the education of the country's young people. That's pretty deep.
Can I say something on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is, what I've been learning by studying the minister's words, and he keeps talking about, what is our worst enemy? And I believe he mentioned that in that clip. He said, what was our worst enemy as a people?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Ignorance? I'm not sure. Disunity?
No. Yes, disunity.
Yes.
And again, a lot of the disunity is, brought on by jealousy and envy. But again, the reason that, what fuels jealousy and envy is ignorance. Because it's that lack of knowledge of self. Because he keeps saying that if you, focus on your gift and develop your gift, you really don't have time to worry about and be jealous and envious on what somebody else has. So literally engaging in self-development and self-improvement and learning about self, accepting your own and be yourself, you will not fall to the ills of jealousy and envy because you are too consumed with yourself and what you're doing instead of what somebody else is doing. So literally it's, knowledge can dispel a lot of the ills that we have, because without that ignorance, we're not going to make, again, these false inferences, just like, you're better than somebody. But when you have knowledge, once you have knowledge, you can see that you're not better than somebody else, but you're different. Just same thing for like sexism. Like how some people say, oh, men are better than women because men are stronger. But at the same time, women can do things that men can't do. But they're different. And they're different because they have a different purpose. But the catch is that they cannot, they can't justify themselves without working together. Right. And so, but if you don't have knowledge, if you don't know, a woman, if you don't know what a woman is and what she was made for, if you don't know what a man is and what he was made for, you're going to function, improperly or about the opposite when you're going to have an improper inference. And so having knowledge of a thing, knowing, the purpose and the nature of a thing, you can use it properly. And so a lot of the ills we have as a community stem from ignorance, as you were saying.
And that's it.
But
go ahead.
But I was going to say, like the minister said, though, the enemy has made us into him. And like you were talking about how when they were excommunicated and then start coming up with these ideas about good, bad, right, wrong, this and that, he has made us into that. And so when he found out the truth, he was jealous that and envious that he was not the superior one. And so he in turn made us like this. And now anybody who, and this is not everybody, I mean, and this is a blanket statement, just the condition of the relationship between people in charge and those under them, we tend to take on that mindset because it was a system that was put in place. And now, so at each point of whatever sphere you have, you brought that system into your sphere. So how the enemy has made a system to treat the darker people. So it is with the teachers and the students, the male to the female, the parents to the children, like how you get the person who had the article about, how dare you, me have to teach my children
Mm-hmm.
when you were given charge over them. So now you don't want the responsibility and, of giving them freedom, justice, and equality.
Right.
And
it's
so,
about accepting your own.
Right. And so the thing is, just like we're in the condition, it was a system that was put in place to make us this way.
Straight up.
So now we need a system to undo this.
That's what Minister Ava said last night.
Not just here and there. Okay, you might get some knowledge. You might get some knowledge. I may get some knowledge. So I have it. But what does that do for the whole?
That's right.
We need a system to make it every time. That way everybody gets it.
That's right.
Not just individuals here and there sporadically.
Right.
So you might, you can create, but then even with that, us as individuals, then I have something. Since I got it and you got it, it's not everybody. Now, I think we should use my way. And so here comes that jealousy and envy.
That's right.
My way is better. I think we should use my way. We're not going to use your way.
You're right on
because
it.
Mine is better.
Wait a minute. She right on it because Minister Ava said, and this is real, because a lot of times as Muslims, we think something and then we'll hear it being said by, somebody on the rostrum or something. Minister Ava said, Student Minister Ava said last night in study group. Yes, the party line. She said that the minister was talking about systems. And she was talking about the development of systems. And she used the lion. She said a lion is born into a system that has everything it needs to support it. It has, the water, the food, everything. And so she said that we will be getting this information at some time in the future, but the point is that you're right on it, is that we cannot take anything of this world, so to speak. It's going to be a transition, but we have to have a totally different system. Like a child has a blood system, all these 9 systems that exist within the mother, but at a certain time, those systems have to function on their own, at least to heal the mother and the child. So you're right on it.
And even with that, at the end, because even as a child's being born, you have the umbilical cord. It's still, even though the child's out the womb now, it still needs a time period to let the rest of that blood flow. So even as we're making a transition, there's still going to be some things that we have to take from the system. And like the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad put on in the back of the final call, you're going to have to give us a time period that you still continue to, give us sustenance until we're able to go completely independent of the system that you have.
And that's one of the things that the minister said. He said, until we as Black people are put back in our rightful place as the original people, he said the rest of the world said basically that nothing is going to be right until we're set back in our right place.
Right.
Sister Gabrielle, go ahead.
No, I was just saying when Sister Demonzel was talking about the back page of the final call, but that's also the same thing we learned from studying Yaqub's history, is that that is how his people, they made a deal with the king of that time and said, we will agree to go if you support us the next 25 years. So this, there's a lot to be learned in that history. But and Sister Demonzel, you're right on it when you said systems, because and that's why I love that lecture, because he really lays out the case of what reparations look like, or reparatory justice. So when you repair something, you bring it back to its former state or former state of functionality. And so he was saying the thing is that being under this system of white supremacy, we have, as Sister Demonzel was saying, become devils ourselves. But he said to bring us back, we have to be broken down and made new again. And so
he said he was a repaired man.
Exactly. He said he was a repaired Black man, but what he actually says that well, now that's what has to be done. How do we know? and he said, you know,
Mhm.
well, we have to be given a teacher, and you know how we get a
Yeah.
teacher unless the teacher is sent. So again, he was alluding to it's going to take a certain type of education
That's right.
that's really going to prepare us,
Right.
because we've been, and he said, and even with that, he said that it's only vanity to think that those things
It's
will
gonna be
be
done in your
accomplished
lifetime. Mhm.
in your
Mhm.
lifetime. And so
Mhm.
going to the necessity of systems,
That's
because
right.
again,
That's
if
right.
you and he talked a lot about mortality, and if
Mhm.
you as a human being, he said, what's the point of giving the male and female sperm and ovum if it wasn't for them to reproduce after their own kind? And so the moment you're born, you're going to expire at some time. So
That's
that's
right.
while you are part of life, is a part of your being, you create systems that
Mhm.
will live beyond you. So a
Mhm.
system will outlive an individual. And the
Mhm.
system not only will outlive an individual, but it also will continue to produce after the individual is gone.
Mhm.
Because you know, a statue can outlive an individual,
Mhm.
but a statue is dead.
Right.
It's going to be the same
Mhm.
from the point that it was constructed to the point that, you know, whatever point in time that it's still looked at, unless it's torn down, but it will always be the same. There's no life in a statue. But when you're
Right.
dealing with a system, there's some type of way that that's a living thing. That is
Mhm.
something that can grow things and
It's
reproduce.
called
And then,
organic.
exactly. And so when we're talking about systems, this is what we're going to need to repair ourselves, because our reparation is going to be intergenerational work.
Mhm.
But again, we don't want to keep starting over from
Mhm.
scratch.
Mhm.
But the
But we
thing
want
is,
to advance whatever it is that we're
right.
doing.
But we have to get out of again, like he said, the jealousy and envy, because that's why we keep starting over. Because the thing is, since we haven't created systems, as we get older, because I know in another, I don't know if it's this lecture or another lecture, he talked about being jealous of the young people.
It
Yeah.
was the same
And the
like
thing is, and the thing
Yeah. It was
is,
this one.
we try to hold a torch until we, you know, we can't hold on to it no more. Somebody to take it from us.
right.
Instead of giving somebody that's
Mhm.
coming after you and rearing them to take
That's
your
right.
place. And that's what a system does. It prepares the next person to take the place of. So
Right.
when you are no longer there, there's no gap.
Right.
Right.
And a system is not an individual.
That's
Because
right.
when you're a part of a system, you don't get caught up in ego driven ambitions, because a system is almost like a personless entity. So there's
Mhm.
no one individual. And so as long as we
Right.
keep looking for individuals to be our leaders,
Mhm.
you know, those individuals will come and go. And then with those individuals, there will be certain things that looking at an individual will produce. But when you have something that is, you know, ambiguous to a certain degree, but it's always working, it's always moving, it's
Mhm.
always producing, you don't have
Mhm.
to focus on something that's fleeting, because
Right.
that individual will be here today and gone tomorrow. But when you have a system, the individual becomes small, but but you can make a system based off an individual. So
But the thing about a system, or um, you don't even see it, you don't taste it, you don't touch it. It just is.
exactly.
And so that's how systems work. Nobody is looking and say, you know, you see that system over there? No, it's just
Right.
how things work. When you're
I mean, but
born,
and the thing is, when something happens, the system will adjust. Because, like,
yeah,
for
or
example,
break
now
down.
Right.
it'll break down, but it's still to a degree functions. Because like when we
Yeah,
have this coronavirus going on, guess what? America still is running. You know, everything ain't shut down. Like it
yes.
didn't just totally
The president didn't
stop.
fill most of his positions, but the government is still going.
Right. And so because there's a system in place.
The
Exactly.
system in place. Now, this brings us to the next point, because we are winding right on down. But I want to close out the point about the Massachusetts laws, and then we're going to go to this next thing, which I don't know whether or not we get a chance to finish it, but we'll see what we can do. So this is back where they said that, you know, ignorance is satanic. But it says that here, it says the rationale for the law reflected the Calvinist Puritan ethos of the time, and in particular, the influence of Reverend John Cotton, who was a teacher in the First Church of Boston, the one of, excuse me, and one of the Massachusetts Bay Colony's most influential leaders. The Puritans sought to create a literate population to ensure that, as the law put it, ye old deluder Satan could not use illiteracy to keep men from the knowledge of the scriptures. Their religious belief emphasized the view that personal knowledge of the scripture was an essential requirement for the temporal living and eternal salvation. Your own personal knowledge of it. It says the statute also endorsed the principle that interpretation of the scripture should be done under the aegis is spelled Aegis, of proper authority, namely the Puritan leaders, in order to avoid false glosses of saint-seeming deceivers. So in other words, back again, they were establishing a system. They were beginning to try to, in earnest, for their children, because they cared about their children, that they were trying to ensure that whatever happened, because in England, you know, that the scriptures were just reserved for the priest class. And so when they ran over here to America, or not ran, but when they came over here to America, they came for religious freedoms. And one of the things that they wanted to do is to be able to read the scriptures for themselves. But prior to the translation of the Bible out of the original tongues, it was in a different language that they could not read. So even if they knew how to read, it was still in another tongues, as they said. So now they translated it out of tongues, these other tongues, into English, but they only left it for the priest class. And a lot of the Latin, they had a lot of Latin in there. Latin was what? A dead language. Nobody spoke it. So only the priests knew Latin. So anyway.
Latin is still the language of the Catholic Church to this day.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so therefore the Puritans wanted a pure version of religion, devoid of all these intermediaries like you had in the church. So saying all that to say is that the people wanted their children not to be deceived by Satan or by anybody who would come and take the scriptures and, you know, use them for their own deceptive ends. And the only way you can ensure that is that the people had to be able to read themselves. And so reading is important, as it says about why does the devil keep our people illiterate. Now, lastly, I want to go back to systems, because I asked the question about the universal system. What is universal? Now, I think that as we conclude, we have concluded that a universal education, because we don't want to leave the listeners unclear about what we're saying. Because if they were looking for us to say, okay, a universal education has these standards, has these benchmarks, you know, you have to teach this in first grade, this is second grade, we're saying no, that is not a universal education. A universal education is an education where everyone who is under that system of learning can accept their own and be themselves, no matter where they are. Now, there's this article that I was talking about in the beginning, and it's the Rebirth of Education. It's I hope it comes out a little clearer than before the other one. Can you all see it? Good. Okay, yeah, I made it big. Very good. If that's what all I needed to do, I would have worked it out.
No, the actual big text, the larger text is what we need. Everything else is good.
Okay.
I can kind of decipher.
Okay. Well, there's not too much I could do about that. I'm sorry, but we'll put the link below. Maybe I can make it a little bigger. Nonetheless,
It's
so
better.
okay, cool. So in this book, this author is talking about basically that in India, there was it says here, working for the World Bank. This man lived there, World Bank. And so anyway, he took a day to visit this education project that was being funded basically by MIT researchers. And they were funding, they wanted to teach children in some of these small villages in India, the basic, they wanted to teach them mastery of literacy and numeracy. And so they told the parents that if you send your children to me, or send them to this school, they will get a better education that will lift them up out of their condition from where they were. And so anyway, interestingly enough, as you see in this last paragraph, it says, I arrived at the village meeting just after the results had been presented of the children's literacy, right? Or how they were doing in school. It said they were bad, really awful. Though as we shall see in the next chapter, not atypical. It says most fifth graders could not read a simple story, and many could not even recognize letters of the alphabet, and few could do simple division. Now, it's kind of interesting how the story goes, but anyway, so the parents were saying that you told us if we let our children come to the school, that they wouldn't have to do the same hard work that we do, that they would be able to have a better life. And then it says here that a man at the meeting, a man of about 50 years old stood up and looked straight at the principal of the local government school and said, you have betrayed us. I have worked like a brute my whole life because without school, I had no skills other than those of a donkey. But you told us that if I sent my son to school, his life would be different from mine. For 5 years, I have kept him from the fields and work and sent him to your school. Only now I find out that he is 13 years old and does not know anything. His life won't be different. He will labor like a brute, just like me. And then it says the man was right. And so I'm trying to see where the principal basically said, it's not my fault, it's your fault. So it goes into the blame game here. And so what they're trying to do is figure out what kind of education if they said they were going to send them to school. And many of us, we go to school for, 12 years of our lives, and we come out, in some cases, miseducated or less educated than we were when we went in. And so this author is looking at what kind of education can you give across the board that would be an education that would be universal. So he makes these analogies. And I thought that this was interesting. That's where I'm skipping to now. And he said that the two key concepts about schooling systems allow the persistence of these terrible outcomes. And he says, both of which I will introduce with metaphors from the animal kingdom, the spiders versus the starfish. And I think Sister Demoiselle alluded to systems. And we know the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talked about the spider web being a system, being spawned from the spider. So let's look at his analogy right quick. And then what we'll do is that we'll kind of start wrapping it up for the last final remarks. Now, the school systems, it says here, spiders versus starfish. School systems have become spider organizations. Ori Brockman and Rod Beckstrom, in their 2006 work, The Starfish and the Spider, The Unstoppable Power of Leaderless Organizations, contrast spider organizations, which are centralized, with starfish organizations, which are decentralized. They propose 9 criteria to distinguish centralized from decentralized modes of organization. And the one, is there someone in charge? Is there a headquarters? If you thump it on the head, does it die? Is there clear division of roles? If you take out a unit, is the whole harmed? Are knowledge and power concentrated? Is the organization rigid? Are units funded by the organization? Can you count the participants? Do groups communicate through intermediaries? Very interesting. So, in just talking about this, because I know that we are at the hour, it says they adopt the metaphor of the spider because the spider uses its web to expand its reach, but all information created by the vibrations of the web must be processed, decisions made, and actions taken by one spider brain at the center of the web. Whereas the starfish, in contrast, is a very different kind of organism. Many species of starfish actually have no brain. The starfish is a radically decentralized organism with only a loosely connected nervous system. The starfish moves not because the brain processes information and decides to move, but because the local actions of its loosely connected parts add up to movements. Now, there's talking about the difference between these two types of systems in terms of developing a universal education. And it says in many countries, the legacy system of schooling is a large government-owned spider. And it says these systems are top-down bureaucracies that attempt to control the entire system from a centralized location at a national or state provincial level, deciding which schools get built, to which teachers get assigned to what schools and what subjects are taught. It says when the spider system works, they are terrific at logistical tasks, that the expansion of schooling is amenable to spiders. If you want to build 1,000 primary schools quickly at a low cost, top-down programs and crank out standardized schoolings following a 5-year plan is a great way to do it. And so I'm not going to go ahead and read into all of this. The next thing about the spider and the starfish school is that the starfish school has more autonomy. Whereas, there's a chart in here I want to just kind of bring up right quick. And it deals with the 6 features of systems of schools in progressive education ecosystems. Now, this author is actually not an educator, he's an economist, because you have to, in the beginning of the article, is talking about educating children for the future and which type of education is the best. And so here he compares and contrasts schools that are, without reading all of them, the spider school and the starfish school. And so you talk about, he uses these 6 features: whether or not it's open, whether or not it's locally operated, performance pressures, professionally networked, technically supported, and flexibility finance. So he deals with this, and we'll leave this in the chat, the different types of systems that operate within a school. But the final analysis of it is that the way that he breaks it down is that in order to, well, I think that it's just better to read it than for me just to paraphrase it. And it says here, the mismatch between the education that children need for the world they will face and the legacy systems of schooling can provide for growing, open, locally autonomous, performance pressure, professionally networked, technically supported, and flexibly financed starfish system of schooling, starfish system of education, build on the legacy system that successfully provided access to schooling to give children the education they needed for the century that they live in. but everything comes with a price, he says. The price of the Starfish system is not financial. Again and again, disruptive innovation in Starfish system provides ways to produce more learning with less money. So if we think about what's going on now with the COVID-19, the price of better education is allowing freedom, giving choices, and hence ceding power. This is the price that must be paid by the powerful, not knowing for their largesse. The purpose of the large, centrally controlled spider schooling system was to limit choices of teachers about how they could teach, of students and parents about what they could learn. The Starfish system must be open and locally autonomous, and that opens the way for choices by parents and students, by headmasters and teachers. Choice means freedom, and freedom means power. Schooling systems cannot prepare children for the future of freedom, diversity, and creativity in the absence of freedom, diversity, and creativity in the way education is provided. We are at 7 o'clock. We're at the end of the hour, but in short, in order for us to have a universal education, it can't be one where there's, like we tried to go with Common Core model of education. We tried to snatch from Singapore and try to implement the Singapore model of education or the Massachusetts model of education. That is not education, that's control. When you try to make everybody do the same thing. As Sister Demoiselle said in the beginning, it's just not possible for everybody to be exactly alike. Everybody's needs are not the same. Each person is an individual with individual gifts, skills, and talents. A universal education is an education that can educate the individual so that they can accept their own, be themselves, love themselves, can be happy in other people being themselves, loving themselves. As we say, we want for our brother and sister what we want for ourselves. And so this is the type of education that we must produce in order to kill the mind, as the minister said, of the ego, of self. And this will make us no longer creatures, as the minister said, that we have been turned into by the enemy. So, closing comments.
There was I love how the minister put it so eloquently later in that. So put the link, please, for that lecture in the description, because, we've been using that lecture as a talking point, but really, he really lays out the case in that. But going back to what you were saying about killing the ego and working together and things like that, and I believe he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said that until we can, unite, we're going to continue to be niggers, struggling with concepts that we can't seem to understand. And so, with this universal education, until we can make it universal, we're going to continue to struggle to grasp on to concepts. So the fact that we don't have systems, kind of is because we haven't found unity. And the worst enemy to our unity are the jealousy and envy and egos. So we have to, that's the first thing
vanity.
that we have to deal with. And so that should be the first thing on the topic of this education, as you said, is knowledge of self. That is requisite.
Sister James,
I don't have anything.
That's
it.
And
I do not.
And that's really it. Just imagine where you have an where you can go in this. Competition is not bad, but excessive competition is not good either. Competition breeds innovation. However, but we're told to at all costs, it doesn't matter who you have to pull down in order to get up. That mindset has to be killed, because that's what has us in the condition that we're in today. And so the reality of what reading is and literacy means, it means that we have the ability, and really read, to find the truth, because that's what really what we need. We need
But truth is the universal education.
It is.
Exactly.
That's where you started.
That is what it is. I mean, I said that in previous podcasts. That's the issue. That's why the system is what it is. This is a system based on lies.
And who's in charge?
Right. So now we need a system based on truth, and that in itself is going to bring about a universal education.
That's it. That's it. And
if I know my real self, you know your real self, who you are, where you come from.
That's right.
Then I don't have to be envious, because we have different. We are, what do you say? We're all gods.
Yes.
But my Godhead, I express it differently than you.
Yes.
That doesn't make me better.
That's right.
Just different.
Yeah.
But guess what? I need you and you need me. That's how this thing works.
Unity. That's it.
Exactly. That's what keeps us alive. If our heart was competing with our lungs, we would be in bad condition. If the kidneys were trying to be, the stomach, you would really be in a bad condition. But it's because they all know their function and their role, and they're dedicated. They dedicate to their service. They understand themselves, and they understand their purpose, and they work in harmony.
Right. And no one part is, even though you may have a bigger organ, or your thigh is bigger than your arm, but guess what? Cut off your pinky toe and see how unbalanced you're gonna be when you walk.
Yeah.
You need every part,
necessary.
Everything. Everything. And so just do your part. Don't try to do somebody else's part. Imagine your hands were on your feet and your feet were on your hands. That's not where they belong.
I think they had that on AM Flux.
Do your part.
That's what I was thinking.
Do your part. Be in your place, not somebody else's place. Be in your place. And that comes with accepting your own and being yourself.
Right. You have to know what your place is. That's the first thing you have to do before you can do it.
That's right, because you look crazy when you're doing something that is not your place. You look like a creature, like the minister said. You look crazy. So the point is that if you were looking for some boxed up universal education that we could just drop on you like that, that would be unjust for everybody. So what is justice?
I mean,
I can bear this.
but again, that's what we're looking at. Again, this system that we've been under, white supremacy, this educational system of white supremacy, is I want everybody to be like me. I'm Mr. White Man, and I want everybody to be like me. If you're not like me, you're not accepted. So you can't have your kinky hair at my job. You can't express yourself with all this blackness. Don't wear this dashiki or your oriental garb you wear. You dress like me, you cut your hair like me, you perm it, you do whatever you got to do to look like me. And that is not freedom, justice, and equality.
It's not. And so that's what we need to know. And so when we think that everybody's going to walk around on the planet with a headpiece and a bow tie.
And a bow tie, right.
No.
That's not what we're looking for.
And that is not freedom, justice, and equality.
It's not. Yeah. So the perfect example that I can give in closing is when we went to Malaysia. And as soon as we stepped off the plane, you had Hindus. Malaysia is a majority Muslim country. And so you had Hindus wearing their Hindu garb that were working at the airport. The females, had on their little uniforms with their guns. And, you had Muslims. The Muslim women had theirs. They had, You had prayer rooms, and you had all different ethnicities, Chinese, you had Buddhists, all living in that one little country. I think that's a country that we could study the model, and they got the country without war. Japan gave them the country because they were fighting wars on too many fronts and they couldn't keep it. So they just gave it to the Malay people. So the point is that wouldn't be too far from what maybe might happen with us. But nonetheless, the point is that you have all these different people, ethnicities living in the same place, and they coexist pretty good. Yes, Gabrielle?
No, I'm not gonna, we might just have to say that next week.
Okay, so in closing, everyone, the Supreme Muslim Educational Center is calling for people who are interested in submitting scholarly papers on the topic of supreme wisdom and education, or supreme wisdom, the supreme wisdom curriculum, and or the current events and the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and education. And we are taking applications also for paper reviewers. So those of us the applicants, should have a background in either technical writing or academic writing or even editing. And so please submit your papers and or your resumes to us at info@supremewisdomeducationalcenter.org. And always remember to please like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so we can keep you updated on the latest content that we have coming to you. May Allah bless us all with the light of His understanding until we see you on the next episode of the New Educational Podcast, New World Educational Podcast. Assalamu alaikum.